Hey, what's up, guys? Note Investor here. Coming back after a break. I was away from the charts for a few days, catching some beach time, some waves, some relaxation, and it was calmer than the Bitcoin price chart for a few days until today. Bitcoin decided to finally stop acting like a stable coin and moved out of range. We've been tracking this range here. It was 13 days going on this very tight price action, very unusual for it to be that tight for this long. And it finally breaks out, broke to the downside. And so we're going to be talking primarily Bitcoin, looking at a few other names very quickly, but just some thoughts there. And I'm also going to be talking about the stock market and some of the day trading that I've been doing along those lines. If you missed it, I posted a video a few weeks back about the stock market in various ways to look into potentially capitalizing on the short side in the event of a market sell-off. And that's primarily what I've been doing, mostly from the day trading perspective, but we've been seeing some very big moves in that market to the downside. And so I'm going to be talking about that a little bit here towards the end. But for now, let's take a look at Bitcoin. You can see here on the chart, I have the daily chart of BTC USD on Coinbase. Very tight action. The thing to note here was we had that big break, and then, as you guys all remember, this was the Tether scare. And after that, things just went flat. There was a lot of alts that were doing pretty good here up until the last couple of days. Even the alts started to roll over here a little bit last few days. But notice the 10 EMA never was able to cross back above the 22. We're seeing this roll over now. The same story on the Ethereum side. But we did break to the downside. So now the levels to watch on the downside are some near-term support. I am looking for a bounce here, and I'll go into that shortly. But on the support side, you can see where prices came down right to this little consolidation that we saw a few days back. And then ultimately, prices need to hold this mid 6100 level if they continue lower. Now, the good news is that in the very near term, because prices were so flat for so long, this sell-off pushed it into oversold territory very quickly, very easily. And if you go to the 1 hour chart here, what I was looking for this morning, we saw the sell-off. I didn't go short just because we haven't seen a lot of momentum or follow-through on either direction when we've had these moves in the past. There was a good potential that this was a shakeout, but what I was looking for was, do we get a little bit of a bear flag bounce and then the move lower? At that point, those make for better short entries, but we didn't really see that. Instead, we're seeing a test of the recent lows here today, and it's starting to move higher. Still needs to get above this 10 EMA on the 1 hour to really start showing some difference, but you can see the moving average, the MACD was moving higher, signifying a little bit of loss of momentum. But look at how low the RSI got here on the hourlies, just sitting here at the low end of the range. 4 hour chart, not much difference. During the low hit some, in the teens. And so a bounce would be normal here. And so that's what I'm looking for, a little bit of upside potential. And then from there, we'll have to see how it goes, right? Is this going to be a little bit of a bull flag, or a bear flag bounce that just rallies into the EMAs or into resistance and then sends another leg down? That's something potentially to watch out for. The alternative scenario to look out for is this could have been the shakeout. We've seen this very often, right? You get this very tight price action, then you get the shakeout, but there's no follow through to the downside, followed by a move up. So that's what I'd like to see here. This turn into a little bit of a shakeout, followed by a move breaking above range. That would be very bullish, but for now, I'm not going to really preempt it other than maybe some quick trades on a bounce. Not looking for a whole lot until we see a little bit more detail, right? A little bit more data coming out, some more cards out of the deck, if you will, to kind of give us more clues as to what's going to potentially transpire here. Looking at Ethereum, you can see very similar price action. Ethereum was a little bit more bearish, in my opinion, on the daily chart. You can see this daily chart was just this big sell-off we had a few months back. The 10 EMA was never able to get above the 22 on my charts here, and then we had the big sell-off, and this just was a little bit weaker. Still very tight price action during the last 2 weeks, but again, very weak, and you just let the RSI reset. So the daily chart has room to go to the downside if the sell-off wants to continue. And so that's something I'm keeping an eye on here. If I am going to go short, ultimately I probably will short on the Ethereum side and not so much on the Bitcoin side. But right now, I'm looking for a bounce. Very similar price action here. You can see we had a little bit of a, not a double bottom, but it was a retest of support here in the last couple of hours. And now we're moving higher. So the first test will be, do we clear this most recent swing high around 195, 196? And if so, then getting back into this resistance level is going to be the must watch area, so around 198. And that's going to be the levels I'm going to be paying attention to here, kind of going into the next few hours, next day or two. Looking at Ripple, I did take a quick bounce trade on this guy here as it's moving higher. Again, this is very quick, tight stop type of action. You can see this was just looking for a counter trend rally on this little bit of a double bottom. But other than that, not looking for a huge trade per se, just kind of a bounce into resistance, and then we'll see how it goes from there. But right now, most of the charts were looking this way. We saw a lot of big cap names yesterday showing this very tight chart from the USD pair. You saw EOS, Tron, obviously Ripple, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all had very similar price action, and it was just one of those next move win scenario. Most likely it was just going to be predicated on BTC breaking out of range, and that's exactly what happened. It broke lower, and now the question is, do we finally see some momentum, some trending one way or the other? Is it going to continue lower, or is that going to be it, and that was a shakeout and then back into range? So has not been a lot of momentum in the last couple of weeks. You can see here Ripple just sitting tight, had this little bit of a pull lower, but just not a lot of follow through one way or the other. So the crypto markets, especially the bigger cap names, the what I would consider the higher quality trading names, have been very tight, very quiet for quite some time. There's been some small cap names that continue to move. Poly has been one of the big winners. A lot of the folks in my group here have been trading this one successfully, and it's just continue to be one of the better ones here. And some smaller ones, of course, we've seen them. I mentioned GoChain here in one of my last updates. Still consolidating a little bit after a little bit another stair step here a few days ago, but there's always going to be something that's moving upward in any market. Going back to BTC here on Binance, you can see here the daily chart just continues to drift lower and breaking down here today and right at support. And again, the big picture, not a lot of change. And you know, we've been talking about this for quite some time going into the end of the year, this big pattern that's been playing out, and it just continues to tighten. Still very much in play, very tight price action, and it's going to be interesting to see if and when this finally does break out here. So that's really the big thing that I want to keep you guys focused on is, you know, we've seen these tight ranges, and when things get this flat, you know, a $200 move in Bitcoin feels like a big move, but when you zoom out, you just got to pay it attention and put it in perspective that, you know, we're still very much in this big consolidation, potentially an accumulation zone, but I'm still in that camp that says, hey, we might see that shakeout, scares everybody, potentially traps some shorts, and then we break higher. So those are really the two things that I'm watching out for in the big scheme of things. I still believe that many of the alts have put in a low versus Bitcoin. Now the question is, when does Bitcoin start to show some more strength here? And you can see for the last couple of months, I mean, just overall a relatively flat and trendless market for BTC and many of the other big cap names. And if you're trying to trade it, obviously this is not exactly a trading environment and not very conducive to that. There's been a lot of good trading on the alts and smaller cap names, but Bitcoin and some of these others have just really not seen a lot of momentum one way or the other that lasts more than a couple of days. So we're just waiting for this thing to break out one way or the other, and still very much in pattern. Real quick, I want to shift gears and go into the stock market side. For those of you that follow that market, just continues to see a lot of selling, and today the market reversed pretty big. Looking at the Dow here, you can see this is the weekly chart of the Dow. So you can see here for the last couple of weeks, just very big moves to the downside. And you can see how fast and quick they are. And that's what makes going short and capitalizing on the downside advantageous in many ways, is because the moves are quick and they're fast. And if you just look at how many Dow down 300, 400, 500 down days that we've seen versus when the market's going higher, I mean, you don't get day after day after day of triple digit Dow days. I mean, that's just not common. But on the downside, it's very common. The moves are fast and they're big. The bounces are even bigger, right? And so the volatility has certainly spiked. The S&P, same thing. You can see the NASDAQ, big day down today, and the Russell. And so I wanted to just kind of highlight a couple of things that I've been trading here along the way down. I continue to think we're going to see a little bit of a bounce. I've been expecting for more of a bounce, but so far the daily chart still is trending lower. And today we gapped up on the open and just sold off. Let me switch my charts here to kind of show you what I was doing, and just to kind of give you guys an idea as to how I look at these when I'm trading these intraday. So for example, here's the Russell 2000 IWM. It's an ETF that tracks the Russell 2000. These are the small cap names, and I've been primarily trading this on the downside. They started to lead the way down, and so they've continued to underperform. And this is what I was looking at. And this is the 15-minute chart, and you can see here at the open, we gapped up large. I think the Dow was up like 200 points or something at the open, and then it rallied. And you always want to trade in the direction of the trend. If it's just flat, I really don't do a whole lot. But when we started to see this reversal and it undercut the lows for the day and started to break below these moving averages here, right, that's when I was paying attention for a little bit of a bounce. So I took a short entry here on this first reversal, and as it started to close the gap, this was the gap from Friday to Monday's open, that's when I started to book some gains here. You see we saw another bounce, and this secondary bounce really offered up a good opportunity, and this is where the market started to roll over. And if you're looking at patterns, you can say this is kind of a bear flag pattern, but I'm just really looking for bounces into these two lines. And what I have on the chart here is the 10 EMA, this is the blue line, and this purple line is the VWAP, and that's the volume weighted average price. It's highly used in stocks. I don't use it for any of the other markets that I do trade, but very often when you see a bounce into that and the moving averages are still inverted, those make for some good entries, whether you're going long and buying on a pullback or whether you're going short and selling into a bounce. And that was really the way I played it today. One mistake I did do today was sell or close my position way too early. Decided to call it a day, went flat, went for lunch, and then I came back and the Dow was down 300. But taking a small short trade on here, and you're not capitalizing on the whole move. I mean, I was capitalizing on here, and then I went here, and when it started to get close to the prior lows of the day before, that's when I started to book profits here. And you can see it right at the close. There was a huge reversal. Tons of volume came in right at the close. So tomorrow's going to be interesting to see if we get a pretty decent bounce. But I was trading this one, and the way I was trading it was I wasn't directly shorting the IWM, which is the Russell, but I was going long on the TZA, which is a inverse leveraged ETF. So it was the 3x bear. And so, but I do track the major index that this tracks, and you can see that's what I was doing, right? I caught this first little move higher, and then when it pulled back, that's basically the inverse of what we were looking at on the other chart, and then I caught a pretty good portion of that leg higher on the way up. So again, I started taking profits as it started going to resistance, and towards the end of the day, that turned out to be a good move. But initially I was thinking I got out way too early, this thing is still going. But that's, keep in mind, this is just day trading. I'm just in it for relatively quick moves. Generally positions are held for, anywhere from 20 minutes to a couple of hours tops, and that's really the way I was looking at the market today. And just something to look at here, especially when the crypto markets are very slow and very flat and not moving a whole lot. There's still other things you can take advantage of, and the approach and the strategies, they will vary a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's price action. Just kind of looking at these pullbacks, taking the trend, and at the end of the day, that's what you're doing. You're riding the trend, trading momentum. And so I just wanted to share that. If you missed that other video, go check it out. It'll make a little bit more sense there, but just kind of wanted to share an example, right? Today's kind of a real-time example of what I was doing here today. Turned out to work out pretty well, and I've been doing these type of trades for the last couple of weeks along the way during this selling pressure that we've seen here. Here we go. There's the TZA right along the way up, just kind of has been trending higher as these markets have sold off significantly. So just wanted to bring that quick update for now. I'm going to be watching BTC here as this bounce potentially plays out, see how strong it is. If there's any volume that comes in, we definitely want to see some more buying volume if this bounce is going to be significant. But for now, just paying attention to some of these resistance levels and some of these moving averages on the way up. Prices just are bouncing off of these oversold conditions, and you can see here on the 4-hour chart. RSI is cooling off a little bit. Once it starts to get into that 30-40 RSI range on the 4-hour chart, assuming it does on a bounce, then I will start to get a little bit more cautious and look for potential reversal to the downside or for it to push through resistance. So those are really the two things I'm going to be paying attention to here over the next day and a half or so. If we do see some more significant movement, look out for a live stream tomorrow Otherwise, I will post another video on Wednesday. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you all then. Take care, everyone.